Hey everyone, I hope that you're doing well and that your week is going all right thus far. I just wanted to check in as we are getting closer to the end of the semester. Of course, these 8-week classes go by pretty quick, and I know that all of us are in different points of getting work done, and that's totally fine. Please always check in if you have questions or if I can help with anything, or if you'd like to discuss any of the topics that we've been working on further. To that end, I offered this last week, I believe, but if you're interested at all in having a live meeting on Zoom to talk about Guatemala, to talk about the military dictatorships, things that are coming up, or anything that we've covered thus far, I would love to hear from you. I'm willing to put something like that together so that we can have a conversation in real time. Again, if that's something that you are interested in so that we can push our learning just a little bit deeper, do let me know using the activity feed at the bottom of the homepage, or you can send me an email if that's something that you're interested in, and I can try to schedule that. Let's see, the other thing I did want to point out is to be looking ahead to the final project. This week we're working on Unit 5, so that's the last of the kind of regular units in our course. Unit 6 next week will focus on Ay Rigoberta Menchú, as well as Chapter 12 in the Wood and Alexander book. So we're going to be thinking about the aftermath of horrifically traumatic events like genocide in Guatemala that Rigoberta Menchú brought international attention to in the early 1980s. And what can be done to bring about truth and reconciliation. And I think this is important because it has resonance across Latin America, but these are questions that people in the United States are also starting to try to grapple with in certain ways about our nation's legacies and history of slavery. And so again, I think that although these are difficult issues to think through and work through, they have strong resonance for all of us today. So that's what we're doing in Unit 6, and we're going to have a little bit different kind of format than usual. If you've skipped one of the timeline assignments or journal assignments, you will need to complete the Unit 6 assignment, and what I mean by that is I dropped the lowest of those two assignment scores, so you can skip one and be totally fine. You could also do Unit 6 timeline and journal as extra credit if that's something that would help you to strengthen the work that you've done in class. So again, that's something that you can look at and think about as we move into next week. The following week, you'll have that week to work on the final project and catch up on anything that's still missing or that's still a little behind. Please, again, let me know if you have questions. Just a couple of things I wanted to raise. I was reading work from both Units 3 and 4 yesterday and the day before, and something that I noticed many of us were thinking about, and I think rightfully so, in trying to answer that question of why caudillos across the region. We were thinking about literacy rates amongst the general population. And of course they were very low. Depending on different figures, they were somewhere around 20%. Interestingly though, the literacy rates in the United States around the time of the Revolution and going into the 1800s amongst the general populace wasn't necessarily that much higher. It was a little higher. And again, there are different ways of figuring it, different forums, different places you can find that information. But it raised an interesting question to me, because we want to say, well, the people weren't quite educated enough to participate in democracy. Yet there are other ways to bring people into the democratic process. Some of that happened in the United States. A lot of it happened across Latin America. People got involved with elections and voting in ways that didn't necessarily require them to have a literate background. Either through word of mouth, through rallies, through parties, through lots of different ways of getting messages out to people and getting them on your side politically. Same thing happened in the United States. There was a lot of rallying, a lot of partying, a lot of drinking that would get people interested in one side or the other in an election. So I think this raises some interesting questions kind of on both sides of the border, because it makes us think about how democratic was the United States in its earlier history, right? So, of course, there wasn't the caudillo politics, but we did have patronage politics, and we did have very contentious, even coming to physical confrontations kinds of conflicts amongst politicians. Things weren't as neat as they are often made to seem in American politics either. And I just use the term American in the ways that Latin Americans bristle at. We're Norteamericanos. We take that term to mean just us. But, again, I guess you can see I'm sort of wrestling with some of these questions. That's what we do as historians, is trying to figure out how much of the way we're thinking about things comes from some of our preconceived notions, how much of it comes from historical evidence, and trying to really get into the context of the past as a place that was different, and a place that needs to be understood on its own terms. I'm talking, past as a place, past as a time as well. So just some things to think about. I hope that, again, that things are going well, and I look forward to getting into Unit 5. Of course, we're going to be talking about the Cold War and neoliberalism. So those are two terms that you'll need to define, think about what they mean. What was the Cold War? What is neoliberalism? And why or how do those things relate to civil and human rights? So the guiding question, we're really focusing on, were people's civil and human rights honored and respected during the period from the 1960s through the 1990s across Latin America? If so, how? And if not, why not? And what were some of the structures that were in place that created a situation like that? All right. I will talk to you soon, and I'm hoping all the best for you on this Wednesday.